Hi, my name's Bryce. Welcome to my beginner's guide to Final Fantasy XIV. At this point, you've set out into the world and are swiftly approaching your first dungeon. Since this video includes information for each role, there's a lot to cover. Feel free to use the timestamps to skip to what's relevant to you, but know that understanding the other roles can make you a more effective party member. Here's how I've broken this video down. 1. Preparing for your first dungeon. 2. Fundamentals for everyone. 3. Tanking fundamentals. 4. Healing fundamentals. And 5. DPS fundamentals. Preparing for your first dungeon. TLDR, read your actions and traits, arrange your hotbars, and do the Hall of Novice tutorials. As you've been leveling, new actions have unceremoniously been added to your hotbars. Before entering a dungeon, you should take a few minutes to ensure you understand what your actions do and consider arranging your hotbars to make more sense to you. You can find all your actions under Character, Actions, and Traits. For mouse and keyboard users, simply drag your actions around to set up your hotbars. On controller, press square in this menu to add actions to your hotbar, or if you prefer, you can enable and disable the virtual mouse by holding L1 and pressing R3. Be sure to assign both your class and role actions. While in this menu, you'll want to assign the limit break action to your hotbar. You can find that, as well as sprint, under the general section. Finally, consider adding potions to your hotbar from your inventory. With your hotbars sorted, it's time for basic training. The main story quest will run you right into the Hall of Novice, where the Smith will offer you tutorials on how to play your role in a party. This basic training is a bit too basic in my opinion, but it just might teach you something you didn't know. Importantly, completing all the Hall of Novice lessons will reward you with an armor set that should last several levels. Note you can complete the Hall of Novice lessons for each role you pick up, earning both the knowledge and the armor set for that role. Also note, after you unlock the Hall of Novice, it is available in the menu under Duty, Hall of Novice, allowing you to enter training from anywhere. One last thing for controller players, if you don't have a keyboard on hand to communicate with other players, you'll want to familiarize yourself a bit with the auto-translate dictionary. With the chat bar selected, you can press R1 or tab on keyboard to bring up the dictionary of stock phrases, divided somehow. Much of what you need is regularly under greetings, answers, or tactics. Here's a few key phrases I recommend learning the location of. Hello. This is my first time here. I had fun today. Wait please. Let's take it slow. Fundamentals for everyone. TLDR, use the duty finder to enter a dungeon. Say hello. Let the party know if you're new to a dungeon. As for combat, let the tank pull enemies and stay within the healer's range and line of sight. If you get aggro, run it to the tank. To enter a dungeon, you'll need a party. A properly formed party consists of a tank, a healer, and 2 DPS characters. The easiest way to form a party is via the Duty Finder, which you can access either by interacting with the dungeon entrance or in the menu under Duty Finder. However, if you have friends you want to play with, you'll want to invite them to a party before queuing with the Duty Finder. And this is where we run into our first limitation of the free trial. While free trial players can join a party, they are not allowed to send party invites. Without a subscribed player to send party invites, your best bet will be to queue for the dungeon at the same time and hope you get grouped together. Also note that Final Fantasy XIV uses a level sync system so that high-level players can join their low-level friends in early dungeon by syncing down to the expected level of that dungeon. Unfortunately, this also means most players have run these early dungeons into the ground and tend to go through them pretty fast, skipping any optional paths, which only seem to exist in these early dungeons. Don't worry about missing out though, these side paths only offer a bit of extra flavor or treasure. When you load into a dungeon, it's always nice to say hello to your party. Also, do let them know if it's your first time in the dungeon or if you're new to tanking or healing. This will let them know to slow down and to explain any mechanics necessary. You can always ask if you weren't sure how something worked, or you can look up a dungeon-specific guide later. In general, the Final Fantasy XIV community is welcoming and friendly, so don't be afraid of party chat. Getting into mechanics, we need to talk about enmity, also known as aggro. You may have noticed the enemy list UI during your adventures so far. This red square next to the enemy's name means you hold the enemy's enmity. You have aggro and the enemy is going to target you. In a party, it's the tank's job to hold aggro. As a tank, you'll want to see red squares for every enemy in the list, but for everyone else, a red square means you have a very specific task. Run to the tank so they can pull the enemy off you. To avoid getting aggro in the first place, let the tank handle pulling new enemies into the fray. Also, keep in mind that if you haven't hit an enemy, they don't show up in the enemy list. A couple final notes. The healer can't heal you if you're out of range or line of sight, so try not to get too far away from the healer. The limit break bar is shared between party members. If someone uses their limit break break, it depletes the bar for everyone. When the enemy cast bar pulses with a red outline, that indicates an interruptible attack. If your class gets an interrupt action, it's important to learn to react to that visual cue. When rolling on loot, roll need if you need something, simple as that. Only pass if you really don't want that item. At the end of the dungeon, you get to give one player a commendation, which is essentially a gold star sticker that makes them feel good, so be sure to commend someone. Tanking Fundamentals. TLDR, turn on tank stance. Use your cooldowns regularly, face enemies away from the party. The most important thing to remember as a tank is to turn on tank stance when entering a dungeon. This helps you generate enmity and hold aggro. That's your job. Keep the enemy attention, take all the hits, let the healers focus on healing a single target. Tanks have more health and take less damage than everyone else, so it's critically important that you turn on tank stance and keep the enemies attacking you. Don't forget to turn on tank stance. Your Hall of Novice training will have introduced your core tanking abilities, but that training lacks context. Your best tool for grabbing and holding aggro will be your area of effect attack. Generally, if there's 3 or more enemies, that's your best damage output as well. Your ranged attack is for grabbing a single enemy out of reach of your AoE, such as when a stray enemy targets the healer. Your single target combos are for bosses and finishing off the last couple enemies from a pull. What the Hall of Novice training skips out on entirely is your damage mitigation abilities, such as Rampart, often referred to as cooldowns or CDs. Regular use of cooldowns is an important skill to learn, especially if you've come from other games where cooldowns are meant only for emergencies. Simply, reducing damage taken unburdens the healer, so pop a cooldown when you're pulling enemies to keep everything running smoothly. On the topic of pulling enemies, being in charge of holding enemy aggro largely puts you in charge of pacing through the dungeon. As a general rule, you should have no issues pulling 2 groups of enemies at a time. As you run dungeons, you'll get a better feel for how many enemies you can pull at once. Pulling too many could wipe the party, but too few can be a drag for everyone. If you're ever unsure, lean on the side of too few enemies. A wipe costs more time than a slow pace. Since enemies will be following and facing you, face them away from the party and stand your ground. Of course, dodging incoming attacks is higher priority than trying to keep enemies roughly in the same place, but keeping enemies still helps DPS party members immensely, and also makes incoming attacks more predictable and therefore avoidable. If you do get downed, don't return to the start of the dungeon immediately. The healer may be able to raise you. Note that your enmity is reset on death, so if you get back into the fight, your priority is to grab aggro off everyone, especially the healer. For regular enemies, use your AoEs, but for bosses, you have the provoke roll action, which essentially puts you on top of the enmity chart for a single enemy. Finally, your limit break as a tank reduces damage for the entire party for a very short period. Frankly, you should not use the limit break button unless explicitly told to do so by a party member or dungeon guide. Keep it on your bar, but know that button is mostly not for you. Healing Fundamentals. TLDR, deal damage when not healing, but watch your mana early on. Debuffs with a blue line over their icon can be removed using Asuna. Healing is a matter of keeping everyone alive as best you can, especially you, then the tank, then the DPS. However, remember that if a party doesn't take damage, you don't have to heal them. Deal some damage when you can, though keep an eye on your mana in these early dungeons. While the tank seems to have control over the pace of the dungeon, the healer has a handbrake. If the tank's going too fast for you, tell them to slow down. The party list will show you if a party member has any debuffs. Note their downward arrow shape. Debuffs with this little blue line can be removed using the roll action Asuna. Roll actions, once learned, remain available even when synced to a lower level. There are some important healing roll actions that you may not have unlocked for these early dungeons, including a mana recovery action that puts a significant pinch on your mana to be without. If your mana is running low, hold back on dealing damage and save your mana for healing. When it comes to targeting party members, the party member list will be your go-to. With a mouse, you can click on the party member list to target someone easily. However, on controller, you can benefit from the concept of soft targeting. The up and down directional buttons allow you to scroll through party members in the list, but until you press the cross button to hard target them, they are now your soft target. After you cast a single spell on your soft target, your focus will revert to your previous hard target, allowing you to pop a quick heal and get back to dealing damage. If you need to cast more than a single spell on someone, be sure to press the cross button to hard target. Your limit break as a healer is a powerful party-wide heal that can turn the tide of battle if things are going badly, but most often you'll leave the limit break for the DPS. Remember, dead enemies deal no damage. Do keep your limit break in mind though. Dead party members also deal no damage. DPS Fundamentals. TLDR, don't attack enemies from the front. Kill the ads, and use limit break to kill the final boss. Do damage, kill things, that's your job. But also try not to take damage. If you have any AoE actions unlocked, the general rule is to use them on groups of 3 or more. Once down to a single or pair of enemies, your single target actions will do more damage overall. When reading through your actions, anything that offers a bonus when attacking from the flank or rear is known as a positional. For positionals, pay attention to the targeting ring that appears around the enemy's feet. The section where the ring is open clearly marks the enemy's rear. In general, avoid attacking enemies from the front since most of their attacks will be pointed that way. Also, in general, you'll want to kill any ads that show up in boss fights. This is not always the case, so if an enemy gets marked with this ignore symbol, that's one to leave alone. On the contrary, if an enemy gets marked with the target to attack symbol, murderize it. It is a priority target. Your limit break as a DPS deals a great deal of damage. As such, DPS will generally finish off the final boss in the dungeon with a level 2 limit break. However, the specifics depend on which type of DPS you are. Melee DPS do a single target attack that does the most damage of any limit break. Ranged physical DPS fire a big shot in a straight line from where they stand through their target, damaging any enemies along that line. Ranged magical DPS blast everything in a large targeting circle that needs to be placed after hitting the limit break button. Generally, melee DPS get first dibs on using limit break, followed by ranged physical DPS, then ranged magical DPS. However, if the other DPS is dawdling, feel free to just hit the limit break button and end the fight a little faster. And that should do it. Dungeons are nothing to be afraid of. While there will be additional nuance as you learn new abilities and face greater challenges, these fundamentals should bear you through much of Final Fantasy XIV. So enjoy your time in Eorzea, and thanks for watching.